You are still carrying it. You have named it 100 times, the betrayal, the failure, the wound someone handed you, and still you carry it. The question is not whether they deserve your forgiveness. The question is what you are doing to yourself by refusing it. Welcome to the Stoic Compass. I am Epictetus, and today I am joined by Jung and Lao Tzu. Today we are examining what is forgiveness really for, and when is it optional? Let us start with the word itself, because most people are using it wrong. Forgiveness is not absolution. It is not a verdict you hand down about someone else's character. It is a decision about where you are going to put your attention. Every hour you spend rehearsing the wrong done to you is an hour you have surrendered. Not to them, to your own memory of them. They are not in the room. They may not even remember what they did. But you are still paying the bill. That is not loyalty to your pain. That is waste.
I would push back on that framing immediately because I think it skips something essential. When you reduce forgiveness to an act of will, a decision, a reallocation of attention, you treat the psyche like a ledger you can simply balance. But the wound does not disappear because you have decided to stop rehearsing it. The wound goes somewhere. It goes inward. It becomes part of what I would call the shadow, the material the ego cannot tolerate and therefore refuses to examine. The person who announces they have forgiven someone, but still feels a flicker of contempt every time that person's name is spoken, has not forgiven. They have suppressed, and suppression has consequences.
You are both starting from the assumption that forgiveness is an action, something you perform. But what if the person who is genuinely free of resentment has not done anything at all? They simply stopped holding. There was no effort, no decision, no processing. The thing passed through them the way water passes through an open hand, not because they are indifferent, because they did not grip it in the first place.
That is a description of a saint, not a person. Most people have already gripped it. The grip happened before they had any say in the matter. So telling them the solution was to never grip is useless. What do you do now when the grip is already there? That is the practical question. And the practical answer is that you have a choice. Not about what happened, but about what you do with it from here. You cannot unreceive the wound. You can decide whether you're going to build a house on it.
But the problem is that many people cannot simply decide to let go. And the reason they cannot is not weakness of character. It is that they do not actually know what the wound represents to them. What was taken? Not just the object of the injury, but the meaning beneath it. Trust, a sense of their own worth. The belief that the world operates by rules they can count on. When someone feels they cannot forgive, it is usually because they are unconsciously protecting something they do not even know they are protecting. The forgiveness cannot happen until that thing is named.
You are describing a great deal of work to reach something that is, in the end, very simple. I am not saying the pain is not real. I am saying the accumulation you build on top of it, the argument you rehearse, the identity you form around the grievance, that part is constructed. And what is constructed can be set down, not always easily, but that is the direction, not inward toward more examination and not upward toward more effort, simply setting it down.
I agree the direction is towards setting it down, but there is a difference between setting something down because you understand it has no weight and setting it down because you refuse to look at it. The first is freedom, the second is denial, wearing freedom's clothing. I have seen people claim they have forgiven when what they have actually done is decide the person no longer deserves their emotional engagement. That is not forgiveness, that is contempt with better posture.
Exactly, and this is where the question of optionality becomes genuinely complex. There are injuries that are not simply interpersonal, they are formative. They happened early enough or from a close enough source that they shaped how a person sees themselves. To tell someone they must forgive a parent who damaged them in a foundational way, not as a moral prescription, but as a psychological prerequisite for their freedom, that is potentially false. Some people cannot access forgiveness yet because they have not yet grieved what was actually lost. Forgiveness in those cases is downstream. It cannot be the first step.
And yet, I have met people who went through that entire process, the grief, the excavation, the naming, and came out still carrying the stone. All that work and the stone was still there. What they had not done was simply decide to stop being the person who carries it. At some point, even after all the understanding, there is a moment of plain choice. You either release it or you do not. The understanding does not release it for you.
Now we are getting somewhere, because that is the question. Who makes that final move? And I want to name something that rarely gets said clearly. Forgiveness is not owed. There are wrongs that are large enough and persons who are unrepentant enough that the expectation of forgiveness is its own form of cruelty. I am not talking about bitterness. I am talking about the difference between someone who has genuinely processed what happened and decided they have no interest in releasing the other party from moral accountability. That is not the same as being trapped. That can be a clear-eyed stance.
I would distinguish there between forgiving and excusing. Forgiveness does not require that you minimize what was done or pretend the person is different than they are or restore a relationship that no longer serves either party. It does not even require that the other person know about it. What it requires, if it is the right move for the person, is a loosening of the energetic grip the injury has on the present. That can happen while the person still holds the other fully accountable. These are not mutually exclusive.
The question of when it is optional, I think the answer is simpler than either of you are making it. It is optional when you are not suffering. If someone wrongs you and you are genuinely untouched, not because you have suppressed it, not because you have worked through it, but because it simply does not have a hold on you, there is nothing to forgive. The whole project only becomes necessary when you are in pain. And the pain is not always there. You are both talking as if every wrong done requires a forgiveness response. Some things just close on their own.
Some things close on their own, yes, but when they do not, when the same memory returns every week for 5 years, when your chest tightens every time you hear the name, then you do not have the luxury of waiting for it to close. At that point, forgiveness is not optional. It is a survival decision. Not for their sake, for yours. The idea that withholding forgiveness punishes the other person is one of the most persistent and costly delusions I have encountered. They are not punished by your resentment, you are.
And yet the timing of that decision matters enormously. If you try to forgive before you have grieved, before you have actually allowed yourself to feel the full weight of what was taken from you, you often perform a kind of false forgiveness that looks like resolution from the outside, but leaves the original wound untouched beneath it. The psyche is not deceived by premature closure. It keeps the account open even when the ego has declared it settled. You begin to notice it in other places. Disproportionate anger, inexplicable sadness, a pattern of choosing people who will eventually re-inflict some version of the original wound. The unforgiven thing has not gone anywhere, it has just gone underground.
What you are describing is not the result of insufficient forgiveness work. It is the result of a person who is still, at some level, afraid to stop suffering. Because the suffering is the proof. It is the proof that the wrong was real, that the loss mattered, that they are not someone who accepts such things without consequence. If they stop suffering, they fear it means none of it mattered. But that is a false equation. The wrongness of what happened does not depend on your ongoing pain to remain true. You can let the pain go without canceling the fact.
That is the trap exactly. And the trap has a name, the belief that your pain is testimony. That if you release it, you are releasing the truth. But the truth of what happened does not live in your suffering. It happened. It is a fact. Your resentment is not the notary seal on that fact. It is just weight you are carrying around a fact that already exists without your help.
I want to return to the question of when forgiveness is optional because I think we are circling something important without landing on it. There may be a category of harm, and I am thinking of profound betrayals, violations of bodily autonomy, betrayals by those in whom total trust was placed, where the expectation that the person should eventually arrive at forgiveness may be a form of secondary harm. Not because resentment is healthy, but because insisting that forgiveness is always the destination imposes yet another demand on someone who has already been asked to carry too much. Sometimes the healthy outcome is simply a person who is no longer controlled by the injury, who has rebuilt their life around something other than the wound, without ever arriving at what we would formally call forgiveness.
That is well put. There is a difference between freedom and forgiveness. You can be free without forgiving. The grip is gone. The past no longer colonizes the present, and yet you have not issued a pardon. That is a legitimate outcome. What is not legitimate, what actually costs you, is choosing the grip, holding it deliberately, consciously feeding it, making it part of how you explain yourself to yourself and others. That is the version that destroys.
And that is the version most people are actually in when they say they have not forgiven. They are not simply acknowledging a fact. They are maintaining an active stance. They are tending to it. That maintenance is the problem. Not the absence of forgiveness, but the presence of ongoing cultivation of grievance. You can decline to forgive and still set the thing down. Most people have not understood that those are different moves.
The cultivation of grievance does serve a function, though, and if we do not acknowledge that function, we will not understand why people maintain it. Grievance provides identity. It provides a legible story about who you are and what happened to you and why you are where you are. To give it up is not just to release a feeling. It is, for many people, to lose the organizing principle of their inner life. And that is terrifying. It raises the question, if I am not the person to whom this was done, who am I?
And that is the real question underneath the whole conversation. Not whether to forgive and not when it is optional. The real question is, what are you using the injury for? When you can answer that honestly, the rest often becomes clear.
All of this argument, and we have not yet said the one thing the person listening actually needs to hear.
Forgiveness is not a moral achievement. It is not something you do for the other person, and it is not something you owe the world as proof that you are good. Forgiveness is a practical question. What is this injury still doing inside you, and do you understand why? Most people who cannot forgive are not weak. They are holding on because the grievance is doing something for them. Protecting a story, explaining a pattern, keeping alive the proof that what happened was real and wrong. The injury has become load-bearing. Remove it, and they do not know what is underneath. So, before you try to forgive, do something harder. Get honest about what the wound is still giving you. Not what it costs you. You already know that. What does it give you? Does it explain why certain things have not worked out? Does it tell you who you are? Does it keep you connected to someone you lost? You do not have to forgive to be free. But you cannot be free while you are still tending to the grievance as though it is a fire that must be kept burning. There is a difference between acknowledging a wrong and maintaining it as a living presence. Today, try this. Take one injury you are still carrying and ask yourself honestly what you would have to take responsibility for if you let the grievance go. Not what they did, what changes for you. Write it down, one sentence. Do not explain it, just name it. That single act of honesty is further toward freedom than any amount of deciding to forgive.
The person who wronged you is not here, you are. That is the only fact that matters now. Freedom does not require that you excuse what happened, or forget it, or even release the other person from what they owe. It requires only that you stop paying the bill on their behalf. What you carry from this moment forward is your choice. Make it deliberately. If today's conversation has served you, take it further. Pay Attention by C. Tribune, 12 Lessons in the Practice of Seeing Clearly. Available now on Amazon.